Hi, everyone, and welcome to the boardroom. Today, Drew Kale with me, as usual. How you doing, Drew?
Good, how are you?
And a really nice fella from, I believe it's the Boston area, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong. Dave, how you doing?
Very good.
And if you could pronounce your last name again.
Sure. You want to take a stab at it? It's Bernazzani.
Bernazzani.
Yep, and I'm just in the South Shore Gamers right here south of Boston, Mass.
Just really a nice fellow I met on the internet, and really knows a lot. Writes a lot of articles for various magazine, e-zines, and so forth, and very knowledgeable about games. We picked Tikal today, and there's a pretty good reason for it, because this has won just about every award there is. The Spiel des Jahres, that's the best game of the year in the world. It's won the Gamer's Choice Award. It won Games Magazine's Best Game of the Year award. So we thought it was about time we found out what all the talk's about. Again, Tikal is the game. This is produced by, depending on which version you get, Ravensburger or Rio Grande, which is the one we're showing here. Virtually the same from what I gather. 2 to 4 players, age 10 and up, 75 to 90 minutes, which fit right in with our experience, although some people complain the game's longer. I think Dave's going to tell you why it gets longer. Designed by my boy, Wolfgang Kramer, and Michael Kiesling. These guys are responsible for Taurus, which, if this one isn't the best game of the year, Taurus is finishing second or first in every other one. And another one that's been totally ignored, Evergreen. And we're going to talk, see, that game, it may have a weird theme about music, business, and so forth. People are ignoring this game. It's not a bad game. And with these guys doing it, it has to be. Anyway, I've just wasted half the show talking about that kind of stuff. Let's go to Dave in Boston. He's going to give us kind of an overview of what you're looking at here. Hi, Dave.
Okay, very good. The Tikal is it's got a real nice, catchy theme, eye-catching theme. It's basically a game of discovery where each player is trying to uncover temples and treasures and to try their best to gain as much fame as they can from uncovering the best temples and the best treasures. Like you said, it's a perfectly a great game for about 75 to 90 minutes, and it's very catchy.
Well, this game, there's 2 things that score points. This game is very simple. We're going to make it seem complicated, but believe me, it breaks down to this. You score points for the temples, which you see here. There's a 1 on the top of that. Yep. Other temples will be 2 to 6 points and higher. And these treasures that Drew is going to show, maybe put those out as far as you can. And you score points for collecting those 2 things. It's that easy. Get the most, you win the game. Of course, they're going to throw a few new things at you here. Let's go to the components, which we're kind of starting on here. And we got a real tight close-up here because I really do want you to see some of the detail here. Components, Drew?
We basically have the board. It's a jungle. The little
Motif?
Starting area with, I guess, the archaeologists' caravans and campsites. You got a couple of temples to begin with. There's some of the treasures. You have tiles that you place on each of these hexes to add to the game. Pretty much add, like you're cutting down the jungle. Yeah. Like you're cutting down all the trees and going to. Those range from A to G. That's correct.
A to G in the stack, and they come in order. Also, when you turn them over, there's several different kinds of tiles.
Temples, treasures, jungles, and
volcanoes. It's the volcano, right. So every hex is going to be one of those things, and you place them on the board, and that opens this jungle up into an archaeological dig,
uncovering
so to speak.
Everything there is.
The next thing you have, we talked about the tiles. We have the treasures. There's 8 types of treasures. There's 3 of each. So they become sets. If you have 3 of the set, it's worth more. If you have 2, it's worth less. If you have 1, it's worth even less. Next thing, pyramid value chits. Now, when you have a pyramid like you see here, and you dig and excavate that pyramid, you add, as Drew is doing now, to the number, and it should be a 2. If you do 2 digs, you've taken it up to a 3, and it can go up 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 even. It means the value's going to increase. One interesting thing, though, is that can change control. Other people can control it. Finally, the wood pieces. And this is kind of the nice part about it. And let's get these out so people can see them a little better. You've basically got the same mix. Now, if Dave and I were playing and you were playing, we would each get exactly the same mix in a different color, and that would be 18 of these little workers, one leader that's a little bigger, and he has a couple special advantages. You also get the 2 tents, which are camps. You only get 2.
Yeah,
you build them, they don't move, they stay where they are. And a score, which is a little square piece here, and that is for moving around the scorecard, around the outside of the board. So let's, as far as this game is, it's really this simple. Every turn is almost the same. In fact, it is the same. You place a tile off the top of this stack. You put it where you want with certain restrictions. I'm not going to get into that. And then you spend 10 action points. And that can be moving workers. It can be placing workers. It can be excavating temples if you have a worker in a temple site, digging up treasure, trading, building a camp that I mentioned, or taking permanent control of one of the temples, which you can do. But you can only do some of these things twice. Now, I want to go to Dave now because this is the part of this game that just really knocks you out. There are so many things to decide. So if you were playing this game and when you play this game, what's the strategy you like to use, Dave?
Well, generally, there are so many things that you want to do. You can only do a few things. I think early in the game, I really try to concentrate on treasures. I try to dig as many treasures as I can, preferably 2 per turn, and really hoard them because if you can get the doubles and the triples, those will really score during the 4 scoring rounds during the game. So you're really going to benefit by getting those a little bit earlier in the game.
That's the way Drew started, I think.
Yeah. Did he win?
Well, that's all we did, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's all. I never got around to doing anything else.
You can't be one-dimensional in this kind of a game.
No,
if he did the right thing to start, he just didn't follow it up with anything else.
Right, absolutely. You really do have to diversify. The other thing that I tend to do is I think the winners of all the games I've played have avoided conflict. In other words, if one area of the board is very heavily congested, you don't want to get into a lot of battles there. You don't want to have to worry about taking back control of too many temples. If you can find yourself a little corner of the board where nobody's really bothering you, you can live with a couple of 5 or 6 value temples. If you only have one person in there, you're really having a number of points for very little resources. And I think that if you can avoid the conflict, that's going to help as well.
And by conflict, I guess I didn't do a good job on that. Whoever has control or whoever wants control during a scoring round, they must have the most workers in a particular hex. And obviously that kind of a hex would generally be a temple hex.
Yeah.
Correct?
That's correct.
So in the example I've set up here, I being red have 2, everybody else has 1. I would get the 2 points for this turn. But of course, as it increases in value, I may lose control because somebody else will move in. I think what you're saying is you don't want to get into a knockdown, drag-em-out fight like I did with Brian, your brother, Drew. And one of us won, and the other one really got snaked. But that's exactly, I think, the point you're trying to make, right?
Absolutely, Bob. I mean, you can't avoid conflict. You're going to have some of it, but I think if you can minimize that and take a couple of little freebies where people aren't in there trying to sneak on your points, I think you're going to do a little bit better in the game.